Okay. Good morning, everyone. And then welcome to the first CSI Friday. CSI is a working title, Continuous Service Improvement. I've shamelessly stolen that from one of our customers, City of Edinburgh Council. We're one of the first to coin that kind of phrase about continuous service improvement. This is going to be a series of events that we're going to work with partners on, and you're going to meet one of the really important partners in this first episode. But I just wanted to take a minute to kind of explain where we are. I'm not going to labor too much. We're going to get quickly into the topic for the day. So we're going to talk about continuous service improvement. Why has this come about? Well, I suppose the real trigger for getting these LinkedIn Lives going was watching Gary Vaynerchuk talking about putting yourself out there, talking about the stuff that you're passionate about, challenging yourself. And he sort of was really honest about, it's not his thing, even though he's all over social media all the time. People think it's, that's the way he was designed. It wasn't his thing. So gave a lot of tips about doing it. So I decided to start doing these live. Just a bit about us. We are Lean and Agile. We work a lot with public sector because that was my background. So we got a lot of customers in local government, central government. We've got charities. We've got private sector. We work with them to help them deliver continuous improvement in their organizations, really, and give them the best tools and train them. And we'll probably touch on tools a little bit, but that's not really what it's about today. But I suppose the why really was coming about because during COVID, we've done a lot of stuff online. We've had a lot of events. We've done a lot of user research with our customers. And one of the things they've talked about is wanting to hear about real tangible examples of case studies, how people are delivering continuous improvement, and really just examples and learning from others and trying to avoid those pitfalls. So really comes out of customers and what they're asking and what they want to see. And what we're going to talk about, there's going to be an improvement theme through everything. And, this is a traditional continuous improvement cycle we help people through. But we're really going to talk to experts in their field around improvement. So it's not going to be all lean or all Six Sigma or all Kaizen or anything like that. It's going to be very much talking to people who are working in the field of improvement. So it could be service design, social media, or I was talking to someone about getting one of the next topics up. So all sorts of things. It takes a lot of effort. It's not just the mapping and the improvement work. There's a lot more than that going into delivering. And, this talks about lots and lots of frameworks. And obviously everybody, either has created their own or uses parts of these or blends things together that works for the organization. I can't speak for Ashley, but speaking for myself, I'm very much a pragmatist in this. I've listened to what a lot of the really big and good lean thinkers I respect talk about, and it's very much about a blended approach. There is no one tool that solves all of your problems. There are many tools, and it depends on the context. And actually, some of the stuff that Ashley's going to say today, I think, will sort of talk about how using different tools maybe happened. So the idea with these sessions, and this is almost it now, because this isn't supposed to be a talking shop. Please, by the way, if you do tag in the comments, hashtag Lean and Agile, there will be a competition later. If you do have any comments, we want to make this as interactive as possible. If anybody's watching, if not, hopefully you're catching it on the video. We will be doing more promo. This is obviously the first one. So we're going to do them weekly. The aim is to build up the community of practice and support people doing lean and also to involve obviously those that are coming along in shaping what we deliver, because there's no point putting stuff on if it's not what people want. So without too much further ado, I'd like to introduce Ashley to come up, and I'm just trying to work out StreamYard here, and just bring Ashley up, and we'll maybe drop the screen for a second and just do a couple of little introductions. So from my perspective, we met seems like an age ago, before COVID, in Belfast. You remember those things, those physical events where you used to go and meet people and talk to people at stands and stuff? So we met, you told me what you were doing, and we've sort of had a relationship since, where, you know, we're both involved in the same field, so we'll bounce ideas off each other. But Ashley, tell me a little bit about you and Nexus, and maybe what you've been up to during the you know, this challenging last 18 months.
Yeah, good to see you, Andy. Thanks for having me on. So yeah, you're right, we met in Belfast at that manufacturing, it was the National Manufacturing Expo. I was actually talking at that event as well on, I'm just thinking back now, because coronavirus had just hit, but we were still having physical events. And what was it? It was about the impact that coronavirus was having on the supply chain, which
Oh wow,
we've really seen the impact of that now, and we're still feeling that, I suppose. So yeah, that's it. That's how we met. It was a great event, and yeah, really good to connect with you. So myself, yeah, Andy mentioned there, my business is Nexus Continuous Improvement. And the people often ask me, what's Nexus mean? What's the relevance of that? And I always said that the Nexus is a coming together of things. So for me, it was all my previous experiences, my continuous improvement experience, project management, all that kind of thing. So yeah, that's where the business came from. So yeah, my background's a bit diverse, actually. I've a history. When I first started my career, I worked in hospitality and tourism, so I've always had a bit of a passion for that industry and the service industry in general. But then later on, I came to Ireland, where I live now, and live near Dublin, and I moved into like IBM, big technology companies. IBM, I worked for PayPal, I did work for Vodafone, and a lot of that was around continuous improvement and project management. So that gives you an idea of my background.
I love the logo, by the way. It really tells, you know, it ties into the story of continuous improvement and that sort of stuff. Did you you say hospitality in the background there? Did you get a chance to go to the Titanic Museum when you were there? Because it's literally across the way from where we were, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's funny because I've been to Belfast about 3 times, and at least 2 of those times when we met, we were opposite it, and I didn't go. And I remember the previous time I've walked around. I really like photography, so I was doing loads of photography. I've got photos of the building, never went in, and I keep saying I really want to go. I really want to visit it. And actually, I live just by the train, and the train line here goes to Belfast, so I've no excuse. But I really want to go. Did you go? Did you?
I did, because obviously I was coming across from Torquay, so I was there the day before, so I managed to get along to it. I mean, it's such an iconic building there that I really interesting to see, you know, really what happened, and because it's on the site of the shipyard as well, and lots of it you can actually look out over where the shipyard was, and they've got the historic photos up there, so it's really good. They've got the old gates in there as well. But
I
nice.
really want to go. I don't know if you noticed, Danny, as well. This might be interesting for people listening, I'm not sure, but we had the event center there, that I think it's the Titanic Exhibition Center, which is essentially a giant tent. And they've got the Titanic Museum on one side, and on the other side they've got a movie studio. And in the car park, I don't know, you probably weren't driving there, but in the car park, you could look into the Game of Thrones set and you could see all the castles and everything. It was really cool. Yeah.
Oh wow.
I'm not into Game of
No,
Thrones myself, but it was interesting.
yeah, no, I didn't drive. I
I'm not
think I
sure
was.
if my connection's breaking up there, Andy.
It's okay, mate. It's all right. It's not too bad. I don't know whether I can just adjust. Can I adjust the quality? Because I maybe mistakenly chose 1080p and I should have stuck with 720. But we'll stick with it. It's fine, mate. I'm hearing you coming
Yeah,
through.
that's all right. Okay, good.
That's cool. So. Obviously, I'm just looking at the numbers. I'm not seeing any numbers live on here, but that's fine.
That's all right.
We will carry on because obviously this video will be up on LinkedIn and YouTube. Last slide, really, which was, we had a chat about doing this and just brainstormed a couple of ideas. And this is kind of the working title, or one of the many working titles we were knocking around. But we were talking about what you've been doing recently, and obviously it was quite an interesting story about getting involved in a sector that maybe you haven't been that involved in thus far, even though you've had quite a lot of experience based in numerous sectors so far. But it really intrigued me what you were saying about how you turned up and ostensibly, hence the picture, something that looks really quite clean and lean, and the five S's, probably not a huge amount you could do with that. But do you want to tell us a bit about it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I suppose, my background is the service industry. Even when I was working with IBM and Vodafone, it was always the service side of the business, which is interesting because a lot of people I come across now say to me, we're not really sure if lean is for us because it's manufacturing based. And I say it's not. I've only really, not only really worked, but I've predominantly worked with service-based businesses. So, if anyone's seeing this in the future and they're unsure, can I do lean? Isn't it just for manufacturing? No, it's not. You can use it everywhere. So I think it was a production manager for a manufacturing business, again, just before COVID hit. And we started having this conversation about lean, and in Ireland, as it happens, there's a whole lean grant government system. So you can actually get a government grant to do a lean project, which is absolutely brilliant. So we were talking about it on that basis, and I went in to look at the business, and I walked around the factory and I said, wow, this is amazing. How am I gonna find something here? Because everything was just like the picture you showed there, everything was clean, just like you would expect. So we know the whole kind of inspiration for lean, the kind of not the methodology, but the idea, but the ideology kind of comes from Toyota and comes from Japan, and we think of clean and tidy and neat and everything. And when I went into this factory, I thought, wow, this is amazing. How can I help these people? I'll give them an introduction to lean. Some of them have heard of it, most manufacturing type businesses, they've heard of lean. But these guys, they'd heard of it, but they didn't really know a lot about it. But I looked around, I said, look, you're doing lean, you're just not calling it lean. So then we walked around, we did a tour of the factory, and I said, I talked to some of the staff, and I was asking them questions, and I was just trying to figure out, were they able to share ideas? What happened when they found a better way of working? That kind of thing. So we were having these kind of conversations, and they were just ticking every box. And I was thinking more and more, oh my God, what am I going to do here? How am I going to be able to work with this business? So we had these conversations, and they were sharing all their ideas. There was a real culture of openness, which is brilliant. That's so important. So what I actually realized was they were actually going to be easier to work with, because one of the hardest things is going into a business that has, whether they call it lean or not, they've no concept of sharing ideas and collaboration. There's real closed-mindedness, and this is the way we work, and it's always been this way. Has that been your experience? Yeah.
Absolutely. A lot of the time it is the cultural part. So to go into anywhere and find that the culture is right, that they want to work on the problems, they want to surface the problems, they'll openly talk about ideas and apply some logical thinking to it as well, some analysis. That's just really, really important. So yeah, I mean, it must have been it's quite nerve-wracking walking in a place for the first time, isn't it?
Yeah.
And especially when you're seeing those things and going, oh my god, I'm not seeing stuff immediately. But so what did you do next then?
So I suppose I thought, well, there's not much low-hanging fruit here. So I said, right, well, the manager came to me and said, look, what do you think? Is there really scope for lean here? And I said, well, in theory, there is everywhere. So what can we look at to try and figure that out? So obviously there's no low-hanging fruit. Everything looks great. There's a real good atmosphere. But let's pick one thing that you produce, and let's just follow that from start to finish, and just look at that process and let me understand it from an outside perspective as well. That always helps, just have a second pair of eyes. So we agreed that, and I went on 2 shifts, and I followed the production of these units that they produce. I can't talk too much about it because there's a confidentiality agreement there and everything. But basically, they produce electrical equipment, and I watched one of the guys produce it from start to finish. And what I did during that was I broke it down into logical phases. So there was main components, there was kind of big components that were going in at the beginning. There was then the kind of smaller components, then there was wiring, and then the wiring I broke down into basically I'm not an engineer or anything, but I broke it down into the colors, because they spent quite a lot of time, say, on earth cables. Then there was live and neutral, then there was different colored ones. So every time they started one of these phases, I just made a note of the time. So then I could break that down later on and say, right, so to do the earth cables, it took between, I don't know, this time and this time, and that was 20 minutes, and the next one, this one. And the other thing I did was I had a stopwatch, and I was timing when I felt that they were adding value to that product. So one thing I would say about service industry versus manufacturing industry is I find that it's a lot easier to see value added work in a manufacturing business, because I'd be interested to get your view on that. But I find that in a service industry, you're manufacturing information, and that can be hard to see that.
It can be hard to see it, and when you're working in a workshop scenario, it can also be very emotive. Maybe it's less so in manufacturing. I don't know. I haven't got the manufacturing background myself, but certainly what I find in the workshop scenario, where you start to talk about waste or non-value add work, that can be really emotive, because people are doing that stuff, and you're almost picking apart their job and classifying it as waste. So there needs to be again, it's back to the culture bit. You need to do a bit of work on delivering some psychological safety for people to be able to talk about stuff, and really be able to, feel safe to challenge what they're doing and to identify what isn't adding value and start to work on it. But yeah, I know what you mean. I always tell people not to necessarily, in terms of mapping it in Engage and classifying business value or waste, when you're actually mapping it, I ask people to do that quite quickly. It's not something I want to get too bogged down into. It gives you an indicator, but a lot of the time, if it's business value or it's waste, and what I mean by business value, it's not necessarily a term that would definitely go across to manufacturing. I mean, it is much more a service-based thing, and certainly public sector. Business value being the stuff either we decide we've got to do, maybe our internal audit say we need to do this, or maybe government tells us we've got to collect these stats. So it's not delivering customer value, but it is business value. And what I say to people is don't get too hung up, because we are going to look at business value in a similar way to waste. We're going to challenge whether it needs to be there, whether we can automate it, whether we can remove it, reduce it, do it in different ways, all of those sorts of things. So it's it can be hard, and it is a value judgment. There isn't a clear line. But I'm interested manufacturing being easier.
There you go. There's a new business line for you. One thing that actually came out of a conversation we had recently, which might help people as well, is I was saying about this thing of how do you measure the times, that kind of thing. How do you collect that data? Because I'd have a similar approach that I wouldn't get really hung up on it. It depends on I suppose it depends on what you're trying to get out of the process mapping and the process discovery, that kind of thing, and how critical the data is. But I mean, you said to me, you get a group of people, group of users together, and you get a consensus. If everyone kind of agrees, it's about that. Up till now, I've been kind of working with individuals. That's the way I've been managing it. So it's interesting to get another perspective, and I'll definitely try that now in the future, because I think that's right. That's one thing that I've found, that one person will say. I have a great example actually of someone I did process mapping with, and I think they were trying to protect their job a little bit, because they told me all these things. We went through the whole process. It was quite a lengthy process, and at the end I said, wow, that's like, that process takes you 10 days to complete. It takes 10 days for that thing to go all the way through. That's really shocking. That's amazing. There must be waste here. And we dug into it, and we couldn't, it was really hard to find the non-value thing, because they needed to do everything. But then I actually got access to the systems that the company uses, and I went in and I looked at the timestamps on some of the records, and they had they were turning things around in not even a couple of hours, an hour or something like that. It would come into the system, and an hour later they were sending off a quote. And that got me thinking. There must be other ways of doing this. So that's been really helpful.
Yeah, and I think measurement-wise, as you say, what I tend to find first pass through with anyone is, even if they are measuring data, the data that they're measuring is their current KPIs. And when you actually get into the process, you work out that data isn't the data you want. So even if there were system data, it's not necessarily at this point measuring what you want, which is important in the process, because a lot of the time, I mean, going back to the public sector here, there's been all sorts of KPIs and targets that were driven by government, and they've kind of been adopted as the way we measure ourselves. And those measures aren't driving necessarily the behaviors. They're not necessarily user focused at all. They were just what was measured. And they tend to be the numbers you got. But I prefer to have multiple people in the room, so that for a start, everyone's learning. And as you say, with the estimation, and if you've got more people, then you don't tend to end up with that so much of the unrealistic stuff. But it's always good to do exactly what you did at the manufacturing company and go to the Gemba to validate, go to the work, validate what we found in a mapping exercise at the actual place where it's happening. And because there is an element sometimes of people needing to protect their jobs. But the other thing is there's also the muscle memory thing. If someone asked me about what I do day to day, I'd probably tell them a really high level version of it. All the rubbish stuff I have to do in between, I may not even mention because it just happens and you do it and you don't necessarily notice it. So it does need that validation and looking at it and having more people and certainly data wise, like we said, I do an estimate in the workshop. If it's too important, we'll always try and get data if data exists. And if it's really important, then we're going to have to do some sampling initially.
Yeah.
But the main thing that comes out of it is once we do this change, we build in data points for next time so that we have got the more important data coming out of a system. So next time we're iterating this process, suddenly we've got those tangibles that we've identified that are really important to how well this process is working. So we went on a sidetrack there, mate. So
that's right.
But I think it's important. Measurement is so important. If we go back to the day where you used to map a process and then end up with a pretty picture of a map, but no data points, and you need to go and manually calculate it, or worse still, that I've experienced where that isn't done at all. You just have, here's my as is, here's my to be. We want to do that. Well, why? What are we going to save? What justifies the investment? Even if there's no financial investment, there's an investment of people's time, which has an opportunity cost because they're not able to work on something that might deliver more value. But sorry.
No, it's true. No, it's so true. I thought my bag was just by me now. I was gonna show you the stopwatch, but anyway, I take this stopwatch with me everywhere, and what I did was I broke it down into logical steps. I then, during those steps, I recorded what was value add, and you were asking me how is it easier in manufacturing. So you imagine there's this big metal case on the workbench, and every time, it's that getting into that thing of value, isn't it? I think one of the most important things with lean is learning to see value, and once you get it, you just get it. And that's a thing I've been trying to promote to my clients recently. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been really talking a lot about value and how to see it. And so when I was watching this guy build this unit, he was first of all, he had a box full of components, and he emptied it out into the case that he was going to build. So he emptied all the things out, no value's been added yet. So then he's got to go through all those components and he sorted them in, like, if you're building Lego, you might do all the blue ones, then all the red ones, group it all together, or shape or something like that. So he emptied everything out of this box, and then he organized everything. So at that point, still no value's been added. Like, he needs to do it because he needs organization. But then when he started installing the components, he had to move then the things that he'd emptied out. So again, no value was added. So we put the component in, and he started to tighten the screw. And as soon as he clicked that component into the rack, because it was there's kind of an attachment type thing. So that click, that maybe half a second, value. As soon as he did that product was coming together. That was something that was producing the product. I mean, I know I don't need to say this to you, Andy. You get this, but if it's it might be interesting for other people watching this. So then he started to tighten the screws on it. So every time he tightened the screw, value was being added. He was creating that end product. And over time, again, if you bring Lego's so brilliant, isn't it? Because you can bring so much stuff back to Lego, and it's very easy for people to visualize Lego. And if you imagine you're building a Lego house, and every time you attach a component, that moment that you attach it, you're adding the value. And then when you're looking for the other pieces, you're not adding anything. And it was that's what I was timing. Every time I thought value's definitely being added now, and I hit the timer. And as soon as he stopped, I hit it again. And what I ended up was, with the times that I took at the beginning, we could say 1 one part of the process, what did I break it down into, like stages, logical stages, took 20 minutes, but only 30 seconds of that 20 minutes was adding value.
Wow.
So then I was able to go back to, and there was like, I don't know, 40 odd stages in this build. And then I was able to take that back, do a bit of pull together a little report basically, but bring that to the management and say, look, everything's great. Like, you know, really good atmosphere and everything, really that you are doing lean at a basic level. You know, you're there, you're not calling it lean, but you're doing it. But when I looked at the production process, there was a lot of waste, and this is what waste is. And what I found was you're spending, I think it's 10 hours building this unit, but only, oh God, what was it now? It was only like an hour and a half was actually adding value to the product. Other things was going to get parts, looking for parts, moving things around, you know, all that kind of thing. There was a bit of rework as well, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But, so then it was just a case of saying, right, you've got all this data now on this process. So which of these steps was taking the longest and was adding the least value? So let's just take that one step and let's look at that. Let's go in detail in that. Let's redo the exercise, but just that step, and understand what is happening and how we can reduce that. We came up with some. Yeah, sorry, you're going to say something there.
I was just, you know me, mate. I'm going to try and. What did you map it in, and how did you get that calculation?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so Andy introduced me to Engage process mapping tool, and it's brilliant. I haven't looked back. I used Engage. I did use Engage to map. I use Engage for everything now. Genuinely, I think it's brilliant. And like you said, if you've got the data, it's so easy to convince people. Then, you know, like you can say, this is how it is. You know. So I used Engage. Now I feel, and this would be a good discussion point. I feel that I didn't use it quite as designed, but what I did was there is a feature in Engage where you can add processing time and lead time. So in the lead time, I put the time that the stages took from start to finish. So that's lead time, start to finish. And then the processing time was my value added time. So, you know, it's not called value added time in Engage, but I feel, you know, I could use it for that. And basically the tool gave me the calculations I needed, then the ratio, the lead time to processing time ratio. So I could say then at the end, the process was,
No, I was just going to say that's an innovative way to use it, but clearly what that's going to do is enable you in what you were doing, which was that initial high level view of the process, to be able to capture that. I mean, you can obviously capture that where you go into more detail using the value add steps and using other indicators, but to just get to that first pass through, we've had a quick look at your production line. I now want to be able to tell you the various times that relate to it. Wow, I'm impressed, mate. It's definitely an innovative way of using it to get to the answer you needed at that point.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head there, because that's all I wanted. I wanted a first pass. I didn't want to go into real detail in what specific activity, because it was, you know, like I said, this was a 2-day process to go from start to finish. So it gave me the ratio, so I could then go away and say, I could say for each activity, or not for each activity, for each stage in the process, I could say, this is 10% efficient, this is 30% efficient, you know, as a first pass review, as you said. And overall the process, I think overall the process was like 30% efficient. But then as well, I was able to export that data from Engage as an Excel. So then I could sort that data. I can't remember the exact order, but I filtered the data so that it was in the order. So the things at the top were adding the least value, but taking the longest, like that. And then the idea, exactly as you said, the idea was pick one, and then we go into detail, every single thing that happens, and then marking it value add, non-value add, or necessary waste, you know, and using those features and using the tool as designed. But yeah, good. I'm glad you're impressed by that.
No. I mean, there's many different ways, and there's many different levels that you map at. So going in at that high level and having that first pass and being able to quickly convince, because it doesn't sound like that took you. I mean, how long did it take you to do that exercise and be able to play back to the manager, okay, you've asked me a question and this is my answer?
Yeah, so recording the data, because I did have the laptop there, but because I had the stopwatch in one hand, the clock in the other, I just wrote it down in the notebook. But then putting it into the tool, I don't know, the process was quite long, so it only took about 20 minutes, half an hour to write it in. But then straight away after that 20 minutes, I sent an email off to the management saying, I've just completed the high level, just a high level review of the data I collected, and I can tell you it's 30% efficient, and I'm going to send you on a report in the next couple of days with a bit more detail on my findings and my suggestions. So it was super quick, yeah.
And I love the fact that you have done exactly what I would do in any process, which is, get all that data, but then say, well, here is our target, the high impact, basically. I normally look at high value, high volume, and that's effectively what you're doing there, which is like, low value, as in low value derived, but high waste time, if you want, or just really quickly getting to that point and then being able to say, look, we can delve deeper into these 10, and almost going again to another level and saying these 10 make up X% of your waste, because obviously if you're hitting the high end ones, you're actually hitting a large proportion of that waste in a small interaction. And I suppose this was just one process of their many manufacturing processes across the plant.
Yeah, I was probably lucky. They do produce other things. The facility that I was in predominantly produces this one thing, which made it easy to pick a process, because they specialize in that particular thing. They did do a few other things there, but the other area I looked at was stores, and it was more just a kind of how are the stores. It was kind of just a get to know you type thing. But what was interesting about that as well was what the stores do, because the stores, I mentioned at the beginning of that the guys building the units emptied a box of components, and the stores would compile that box. So an order would come through to stores, they'd put everything in the box, and they'd put that out on the floor, and that meant that was a signal, that was a Kanban essentially.
Yeah,
I'm ready to be built. I was thinking as well while I was watching these guys build, thinking, all these things go through your mind, like, could you, like the Toyota kind of rolling production line, because all the workbenches were on wheels. So could you, rather than the guys building the boxes, the stores filling the boxes, could you have all the components and you move your workbench at each stage to the next area, with all the components you need to eliminate, travel and that kind of thing. But do you know what? I think the way they have it set up works great. I think it works absolutely fine. Another interesting thing that came out of that actually was all the small components. There was a lot of small, little, tiny components, and they were the things that were taking a long time for the guy building to move around and to group together. And I just made a suggestion that why don't they use some trays in the boxes to group all those components together in the stores before they come out. So all that grouping is done before, and then you've eliminated, that's a bit of low-hanging fruit that came out of that you've eliminated probably 20 minutes of work there just by using a tray.
Yeah, and to be fair, from the stores, they're probably taking these components out of big boxes, so they're sorted at that point.
Yeah.
To become unsorted.
Yeah. Yes.
And then be resorted on the line.
Exactly.
So it's kind of double waste in a way, because you're doing two things that are completely unnecessary potentially. I mean, I've never been there, so I'm just talking theoretically.
No, but Yeah, I think it's again that thing of learning to see waste, isn't it? Like, you
Mm,
and me, we're very tuned into it, and you've picked that up straight away. Yeah, there was definitely waste. There was non-value added work happening there like multiple times. So, another suggestion we made was actually to take the components out of the box in the stores because they have to pick them anyway. They have a big skip there for cardboard. Well, why not take them out? And then that's even less work for the guys to do when they're building. And there's a skip right there. They just put everything straight in the skip, all the cardboard. So again, that's another probably with the cleaning up and everything that has to go on the factory floor. That's
hmm
another 20 minutes, half an hour saved just from some. And this is all down to the Gemba, isn't it? Going to see a fresh pair of eyes, going to see, understanding the process. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And the information, of course, although we're like the conduit to collect it, the information for the improvement is coming directly from the people doing the work. And
yeah,
that's back to the cultural thing, isn't it? That people feel like they're able to work on the work. And that's the
hmm
Toyota mentality. I know you mentioned lean earlier and Toyota, and I think I come across a lot of stuff where people think lean has failed, and I
oh
think
really?
where lean projects tend to fail is where people try to take the tools that Toyota used and came up with and think that is being lean, because actually
Yeah,
what Toyota did was understand what they were doing and come up with tools to improve their
yeah,
processes by understanding them, by being at the Gemba, by having
mm.
what did it I'm reading Katie Anderson's book Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn, which is absolutely fantastic. And I think one of the things they used to say at Toyota is we build people, not cars.
Right. Yeah.
That
Okay.
they
Yeah.
grow the people to understand the way that they will build the cars and build the cars better and continuously improve and work on the work and things like that.
Yeah.
And I thought it's so cultural with Toyota. It's a way of
Yeah.
thinking that you need to
Yeah.
adopt for lean, not the
Yeah.
tools that Toyota adopted for their processes. And I think
hmm
that's where you come across things that have come unstuck because people have just picked up tools
Yeah.
and gone, that's doing lean.
Yeah.
And actually it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned at the absolute start, the cultural piece in this organization was really good. That is a brilliant start point. That is the
Mm.
best start point to my mind. If the
Yeah.
leadership and the culture are aligned to improvement, which they
hmm
clearly are because they brought you in, so
Yeah. Yeah.
that shows a positive intent to do something. I
Yeah.
think it's fantastic. But
Yeah. On the Toyota part, they say themselves like don't copy the Toyota production system. I've seen that
mm,
written a few times. This is the Toyota production system. Great, yeah, this is what we did, and it works brilliantly for us. But do your own thing. Don't just copy it. And that's yeah, exactly what you're saying. So that's really important. I'm thinking for other reasons why lean. We're kind of going again, going off on a tangent
it
here, but it's all
conversation, mate. That's what
yeah.
these are designed to be.
Yeah. Culture is like that. That's one of my big things. The culture you have to address the culture. How do you do that? We can probably talk about that in a separate
Yeah.
live stream because that's a whole nother thing, and I've loads of ideas on that. Um, I'm trying to think. Is there anything that I've learned working with this company that I could share? Um, or any company. No, I think we keep culture for another thing because there's so much you can learn about the culture
And I
from the
think, I
culture.
think, yeah, definitely. And another thing that I pulled from Katie's book was purpose as well. That the people in the company understand the purpose of the company, what they're trying to
Mm,
achieve, and they can make the connection between how their job directly impacts that purpose element. So, you know, I see it a lot in public sector where it's really, really hard. And I'll try not to take the mick, and I'll definitely not pick on any individual organization, but you come up with this big strategy, you know, we're going to focus on the people of, okay, I live in Torbay, so I'll just say Torbay, you know, our strategy is to do this and do that and do the other, and we're going to make the bay better. But then try, you know, the individuals in the organization who may be picking up the bins or things like that, find it really hard to connect to that purpose directly. And I think that's so important that, you know, we need to be able to understand what's going on and why it's going on. Toyota's way of inducting people, months and months and months they spend on inducting people. You know, they go to a Toyota, you know, Mr. Yoshino, who worked with Katie on the book, started in HR, but spent months actually building cars on the manufacturing plant. And shortly after he did the induction, they also introduced going to Toyota dealerships and working in there. And he was gutted that he missed out on that. But it's all about, you know, he goes in for HR, but he's spending months understanding the manufacturing, all of the elements.
The business, yeah.
Yeah. So then his HR work isn't doing the HR paperwork or creating the next policy or strategy. It's very much aligned to, it's not about that. It's not the theoretical, the HR. It's about Toyota. It's about what do we do? And it's about how does this work contribute to enabling all of these different elements. So a lot of it does come back to purpose. We probably can't go into that with your example because I'm just mindful that, you know, there are certain things you can't say. And the more we go into a bit of detail, the more likely there is that people might be able to pick out who it might be. And obviously we don't want to do that. But I think purpose and, like you say, culture is a whole topic in itself.
Yeah. I think one thing I was thinking when you were saying about the different practices of lean, and like some people feel that it failed, or they apply what they think is lean. I always say there's a couple of things that there's a lot I say, but one of them is it's a toolbox. You know, first of all, no one owns lean. Like Toyota don't have the monopoly on lean. It's not owned by anyone. There's a lot of organizations that have been set up that I see them as kind of money-making organizations that they certify lean, but you know, that's all they do. They don't really, I'm sure they're probably not going out like practicing lean all the time themselves and teaching lean, but they're set up to certify people, but they don't own lean either. They're just a stamp that says, yeah, it's this, the training's been done to this standard, or it hits these key points. So I really stress that with my clients. No one owns lean. It's a toolbox. Pick the things that make sense to your organization. So it completely ties in with what you're saying, and what you said about Toyota as well. And I think that's really important for people to know. You can't
Toyota. Sorry.
Yeah. I was going to say you can't fail with lean, but you can use the wrong tools, and you know, it's part of the learning. Yeah.
And Toyota isn't about learning a load of theory. Toyota is very much about learn a bit, do it, you know, use it, apply it. It's learn by doing and being coached on the job. And there's a whole topic around, you know, what the role of the manager stroke leader is in there, in how they help and enable people to work and allow them to change things and try things and fail. And there's tons in that book, Katie's book, about things that went on and how they were dealt with. There's a great example of when Mr. Yoshino was on the production line in the paint factory. He actually put the wrong paint in. Big mistake, potentially, you know, the line's got to stop. It's got to be sorted out. How the manager dealt with that was to thank him and to say thank you for finding the problem. We do this all the time. We didn't realize it was down to little things, just as you're mentioning. The labeling wasn't clear on the paint, but the manager was saying that's brilliant. We don't see it because we're doing it all the time, but you've come in with fresh eyes. We've realized there's a problem in the process, and we thank you for finding that. And of course, he was thinking, "Oh God, I'm in a lot of trouble here," because he was fresh out of university, and in Japan they tend to have jobs for life as well. So probably worried about, "Oh my God, have I just screwed myself up here in the very first moment?" But it's those things that are so cultural and so important. Create the space for people to be able to do stuff, and when a mistake happens, I think I was listening to something yesterday, and it's very much a good leader. I think it was another Gary Vaynerchuk thing. I'm starting to be like a fanboy here, but do leaders create that space for innovation? And if you're going to create that space for innovation, you have to own the fact that when you change and innovate, not everything's going to work. And what happens when it doesn't work? Are you taking the blame? Because that's what Toyota do. The manager is the responsible person. They're creating the space for people to work. If something fundamentally goes wrong, people need to feel covered. Otherwise, straight away, and you see it a lot, I've worked in organizations where put your head above the parapet, it's going to be shot off. You're going to be responsible if something goes wrong. So straight away, you see the whole culture go down the tube. You can talk innovation all you want, but people are going, well, I'm not going to say anything because last time I ended up, in a lot of trouble or being called out in a meeting
I've been there. I've been in some really bad situations because I'm the type of person who will say something to my detriment sometimes. Because I want things to be done well. It's not that I'm trying to say, look at me, I'm brilliant. I just want things to be done. I want everyone to succeed, I want everyone to do well. And God, I've a few examples in my head going around that I won't talk about. Just again, I'd have to say who the company is, but some really, really crazy things have happened like that to me. And it's a terrible culture. And you're absolutely right again. That example I'm thinking of, the one really bad one, the customer, without giving away too much here, I was working for an organization who was contracted in by a really big state agency, and our organization had that culture. And there was really no appetite to improve, and the customer hated us. And there was this whole thing the whole time that we were at war with the customer, and it was always like, I'm trying to think of the right words here, but it's like, the customer is our enemy. That's how it felt, and every meeting was a battle, and what they were trying to get one over on us, and I wasn't trying to get one over on anyone, but the meetings, the leaders of the two organizations would be like that, and they'd be going in with a plan and a strategy of how can we shaft the customer, basically. And I was just saying, why is this like that whole thing, going back to lean and and Toyota and everything, supplier relationships. Just I would have said, if I went into that business, if you dropped me in there and said, right, Ashley, you're gonna have to take over this now, I think I would just say to the customer, look, this is the way things are. Here's the truth. This is the way. This is the actual performance and everything. And I'm showing this to you because I want us to have a good relationship. And I know that if we can't be honest, and we can't, if we're not doing well, we just need to improve. We need to find ways to improve. But we never improved because we never admitted that we were doing badly.
Yeah. I've been on many of those supplier customer sort of relationship meetings where the focus very much is going to war and blame, really.
Yes.
And and it's interesting because we're both we've similar past. We both worked as consultants, and we have small businesses. And I think we both operate in the same way, where the way we work with our customers very much is we will surface the difficult things because that's why we're there. You know,
it's not easy.
No,
you have to,
no.
yeah.
But I mean, whenever I'm running workshops, one of the things I try to do to sort of make it easier for people is to emphasize it's not about blame. It's about finding out where we are and improving. And we're not bothered about why we got here, because you get all sorts of reasons. And to my mind, processes are the way they are because people made choices with the best information they had at the time. What's the point of going back and working out why Ashley made this change 5 years ago? Who cares? You know, we're about saying what's going on right now and finding a path forward. And none of that has anything to do with the people. We always use, and we got these stickers, and they're the best stickers that I've ever had. Bad processes, not bad people. Everyone loves them. That's our mantra. It's not about the people. And I think it was Deming who said a bad process will beat good people every time.
A bad system. Yeah, that's on my email signature. That's my that's my quote on my emails. Yeah.
And it totally is. And I think as small businesses, the way we work with customers is about mutual value. You know, we work with our customers, and our success is them succeeding with the stuff that we give them. You know, that's how we succeed, because then they'll talk positively about us and the software and the approach. And I'm sure it's the same for you. And surfacing those difficult questions, I would rather know really early on if an organization doesn't like dealing with the problems. I'd rather know. And it's up to them. They can then say, I don't want you to come back, Andy, because you're focusing on the negative, you know, or something like that. Well, that's great to know, because actually that's never going to be a positive ongoing relationship, and we're never going to be able to deliver value. There may be a different approach, a different consultant, a different company who can give them the support they need. But I think when you focus on a mutual outcome, you stop looking at the periphery. And you know, I've always said, when I was managing projects, the moment you start talking about contracts, the relationship's gone. You know, if customer supplier are talking contracts, then negative. No point. Everyone's looking to the data. Everyone's looking to say your fault, our fault. And actually the reality is we should just be going, how do we move from where we are? You know, let's acknowledge where we are and move on. But I'm mindful of the time, mate, because we've been almost an hour on this. So
I think we could talk for another 10.
I think we could easily. But so putting you on the spot, what would be your kind of key takeaways from, you know, the example we've talked about today? And then a secondary question for me that I'm interested in, because obviously you talked about going in there. What are the next steps with that particular company? Because it sounds to me like they've probably gone, that's great, Ashley, let's do some more. So what's the key takeaways that you learn, I suppose? Can we ever be lean and done? I don't think so personally.
No, you don't mean to you know, influence my answer there, do you? But
no.
But I agree. No, we can't. You can't ever be truly lean, because everything's always changing. If it was that easy, you know, everyone would have the best process all the time, and it would never change. So you can't. No, you need to keep improving and keep me and Andy in a job. But in all seriousness, I suppose the key takeaways are Gemba. go and see. If you're not sure what Gemba is, it's about going and just watching the work being done.
Yeah.
Learn.
And in manufacturing, that's really obvious, isn't it? But equally in service-based industries, that's just go and observe, go to the contact center, go to the place people are doing the work. It still validate what theoretically you find with the reality of what you see.
Yeah. Because even if people are telling you that they're doing it one way, or even if you have a process already written down, chances are when you go and see it, people are doing it differently. They found that, and some of that can be that they found a shortcut. They found an easier, better way of doing it, but then that messes things up down the road. But anyway, so Gemba is definitely one. Take measurements so that you can show improvement. You have a baseline to work to. So that's what I have now. And a third improvement would be the culture, I guess. The third takeaway, have a good positive culture where people can share ideas and share their improvements, and it's just open. Yeah. So they're my key takeaways off the top of my head.
That's brilliant. So I'm going to go for another quote. I think it's a Deming one. In God we trust, all others bring data. And I think that's really important when it comes to improvement. It's not about having a pretty map. It's about being able to really demonstrate with data. It takes the pain out of it. In terms of the lean stuff with the North staff, there's another story about Toyota I heard. We can never be lean. The whole idea with lean is that you're continuously improving. But there's a story about a long time ago, Toyota, basically one of their rivals stole. Toyota was originally a loom company. They made looms and they made fabric.
Yeah.
And someone stole their the design for a loom. And of course, everyone's really worried. They're going, what on earth are we going to do? This company has got this design. And the leaders at Toyota just said, that's okay, don't worry. A huge amount of learning went into that, and we're continuously learning. By the time this company implements that loom and gets it into their production line, we're already going to be way beyond where they are, and we'll continue to do that. So fine. Take our point in time, which was and they'll probably not understand the way it was configured anyway, because it was configured based on loads and loads of learning. So the final bit there, mate, was what you doing next with this company?
So I've already taken the next steps, which sort of created the report and just documented my findings and observations. Then I've just recently had a meeting with the couple of the managers, but also some of the shop floor staff, because like you were saying earlier, we didn't really go into much detail on that, but so important to get get the people doing the work involved, because they're the one who'll have the ideas about how it can be improved. We went through the duration that things took. Some of the things they laughed their heads off and said, how could that have taken that long? And we're going to have to look at that ourselves because that can't be right. That kind of thing. But then we just agreed, what will we look at now? So we've got that information. That's how long that's taken. What can we look at? So we've picked out a specific thing to look at now, and we're gonna map that out in detail. There's a couple of other things, like some of the observations, some of the low-hanging fruit that I did discover. We're going to put that into practice. And that's it. Yeah. Get into the detail, but small bite-sized pieces. Yeah.
Well, that's a very, very Kaizen kind of
very lean
approach, really.
Agile. Yeah. Lean and agile.
I do worry about using terminology around these things, because I think sometimes it can just hide the message when you sit behind terms. I get worried when people look at systems thinking or design thinking, and they want to bring all the terminology to people and they want everyone to understand the terminology. You don't need that. you know, you need some fundamental principles like you talked about. One of the most important things I tried to do in the workshop is introduce the concept of value. And it's to talk about value, and it's to talk about how important it is to focus on customer value, and have that mentality, and that can drive a lot of the work. You know, I sometimes think, you know, all these different methodologies, they're great for consultants who want to roll out a particular framework and sell all the training and stuff like that. But I think, you know, people need to understand the purpose and, you know, not necessarily the terminology.
Do you find with that kind of training, you know, there's a methodology, it gets rolled out, you know, it doesn't last forever. You know, I'm thinking back to when I worked at IBM, you know, Agile was the thing, then it was design thinking, you know, and then there was other things like our Six Sigma was a big thing before that. But then once we started on Agile, people kind of stopped doing Six Sigma, and, you know, it wasn't, but you could take the parts of that were relevant and just use them.
That's actually James Womack, who you know, wrote the original Toyota, but with I met him, the other guy.
I know. I've seen the picture of you, and I always think, is that guy from the Toyota book? Yeah.
And how can I not? It doesn't matter. But James Womack said the question he
Daniel
gets,
Jones.
Dan Jones. Yeah, that's it. But the question he most gets asked by people is, you know, how do we, what methodology should we use, all of those sorts of things. And he basically says, you look at the methodologies, you pick the best of the various methodologies that fit your organization and your purpose, and you get going. You know, don't spend years and years researching all these things and looking at all the methodologies. And as you say, mate, and I'm really trying hard not to name names here, but there are I think we talked about it before. There are different types of consultants. There are consultants, I think it would be fair to describe you and I as pragmatists. We're not aligned completely with a methodology. We're about delivering improvement. There are some consultants who are very aligned to a very strict way and are very, very, very passionate about that is the only way. And it's those projects that I see time and time again when I work through different customers. I can almost ask each individual and say, have you ever done this before? And they say yes. And they'll tell me about the project, and it will 99% of the time be a failure and a very big sticking point. And that's because they've been very rigid. They've said there's only one way, and they apply that way. And how do you get buy-in from the team if this group of consultants comes in from outside and says, this is the right way, you don't know what you're doing? My approach, I think our approach is fair to say, is you go in and you engage the staff, and it's never about what we're doing to you. It's about what can we do together, you know? I almost say in workshops, I'm just the person who's writing it down and going to ask you stupid questions because I don't know what you're doing. You know, I'm not the expert in the room. You are. But the failure-wise, definitely, I think people who stick to a rigid methodology and feel like they have to, everyone has to understand the methodology. You know, we're gonna train the whole organization. They're all gonna understand. And I've done really well to not say it. So I'm gonna, and it's not one example, but yeah, there are many examples of ones like that. So I'd always, and I suppose it's important. Each organization needs to pick people that can add value for them and the approach. And I'm sure there are places where that works, but to me it feels anti-improvement. You know, we're going to train everyone, they're going to understand a load of terminology, and we're going to ask them almost not to think I think we ask them to think. That's the important part. It's the people are absolutely your assets, and the people doing the job know how to change and improve the job, and they know where the bodies are buried in that process as well, you know, metaphorically.
Yeah.
Possibly not metaphorically in some places, but
yeah,
who knows. So yeah, I suppose we better wrap up, mate.
yeah,
I think that's been really, really interesting, and we're definitely going to have more of these conversations, and we're going to have more guests as well, bringing different types of expertise from all around the improvement value chain, you know, up and down that supply chain that we've talked about. I think we could have even got into supply chain and suppliers in that conversation about manufacturing as well. But thank you so much, Ashley. It's been really, really good. And thank you for challenging me to do this live as well.
at short notice.
Yeah, I can now calm down that it's actually coming towards the end. But no, that's been really brilliant. Just want to bring up one last time on the screen. If you need some help, please do have a look at Ashley's website. I've signed up to the lean emails. There's just some little free lean approaches dropping into your inbox. If you want to get that, just go to his website. If you need some help, get in touch. If you're over in Ireland, get in touch. And obviously get in touch with me too. And if you're interested in doing some of these, please do just get in touch with us and have a chat and ask us about it. And we will be doing these going forward. Yeah, definitely. And I think it's been really good. So thank you, Ashley.
Thanks.
New experience for both of us, you know. That's been great. And we'll see you all next time.
All right. See you.
See you later.